So this video is about an analogy. The analogy, oh, excuse me. I'm not doing well health-wise this morning. Oh, not at all. Anyways, the analogy is for the ignorance and the overlooking of illnesses and how a parent might be able to improve their own ability to get their kid help. So one of the things that I had a problem with in my childhood is I would be shaking or bleeding on my shin or sliced open, or I would be seizing, or I would be passed out in a program in back of a tree unconscious and have to be carried inside. I'd be brought to the hospital. I'd wake up on the side of the road unconscious. Things like that would happen, and a lot of it in front of my mother. Even some of it in front of my father, like the bumping into things and my shins being all cut up, the shaking, the falling down during the fireworks, all those happened in front of them. But see, I'm going to give an analogy right now that will explain why they did absolutely nothing. They didn't bring me to a doctor to look into it. They weren't trying to, ask me, and have a full 3-hour conversation about what might be going on with my health. Instead, my mother would come in and just, start screaming at me that you're doing it on purpose. You're bumping and cutting yourself open on purpose. Your shins are bleeding because you're whacking your legs on purpose. Your back of your heel is sliced open because you sliced it open on purpose. And she would just come in screaming like that. Even though really, my foot just shook and got sliced open as I was just going into the pool. As really, I was just walking to grab the remote to the TV and my shin bumped into a table. When really I was just going into the fridge and my shin bumped into the island in the kitchen. Even though really I was just going in to get a glass of water and my shin bumped into the cabinet because I shake and my movements aren't regular. Where I move my leg and tell my leg to go is not where it goes. So it ends up going a little further or bumping or shaking into things, what gets me cut open, and I get a lot of these cuts and scratches. My shoulders also bump into a lot of corners. I also end up shaking. I twitch a lot. I also sometimes go unconscious and fall down. All these things have been apparent for 25 years. But why did my mother and father and the program staff not do anything about it? Well, the program staff did do something about it. They wrote down reports. They put in the reports. They passed it on to the psychological doctor. These are psychiatrists. Now remember, these aren't a primary care. They're not a surgeon. They're not somebody who knows anything about the nervous system. These are people who deal with stuff like depression and bipolar and sedating kids to make the staff's jobs easier. ADHD medication being given out. I mean, I think at the program in Haverhill, almost every single child in that program was on pills. All of them. All these orphans, all these kids without parents, all on pills. And in the program in St. Anne's, about, a quarter of them on pills. A lot of them very quiet, very normal. And these are 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds who literally just got taken from their mother and put into this big, giant building in a prison cell, basically. And they're drugging these kids up and giving them diagnoses at 4, 5, 6 years old. And then in my case, they put me with a mother that lost a little control because I was on like 2 medications when I was in the program, St. Anne's. But after I met this foster mother, my adopted mother who ended up adopting me, oh my God, I ended up getting the 7, 10, 12, all different types of medications. At one point, I was on 12, including the over-the-counter. And on average, it was closer to 7. But I was always on multiple pills and going up and down and feeling so crappy and having all different, and I never got to know what my body was supposed to feel like. Meanwhile, people are ignoring my health and what I don't even know what a normal body is supposed to feel like. Like, for instance, I didn't know that everybody else could see a man in the moon. When my mother yelled at me and screamed at me that I was lying to her because I couldn't see the man in the moon, I thought she was just some nuts crazy woman screaming at me. And now she was nuts to scream at me and yell at me for not being able to see and need glasses. Because keep in mind, for years and years I couldn't see far away, couldn't see far away, couldn't see far away. And instead of me being brought or looked into, or my mother trying to understand that something might be wrong with me, she just screamed at the top of her lungs at me, telling me that I'm some evil child making up stories that I can see the man in the moon. No, I couldn't because I needed glasses. And we found that out later that I needed to wear glasses. But my mother thought I was just lying to her. And this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem. That my mother was very mentally ill, my adopted mother. And I had a lot of health issues due to her behaviors. Some of them I might have been born with, but her behaviors added a lot of them. And here's the analogy, when you have a kid with a toothache, the parents don't know their son has a toothache. The son is just upset, irritated, really pissed off. You know, you have a 6-year-old son, and he just really, really, really seems to be pissed off. Just really complaining, whining, crying, and you don't know what the heck is going on. You just think that 6-year-old's being an asshole, because that's what my mother would think. My mother would just come over, smack me around, give me a bottle of Apocac, and call me an asshole. Or basically take a shovel and pile shit on my head. Meanwhile, the truth is that this child has an infected tooth and needs to go to the dentist. But see, here's the analogy problem. My mother wouldn't do that. I could have an infected tooth at age 6. Be whining for a week, crying. And my mother would be the type to bring me to a psychiatrist. I got an infected tooth, that's why I'm upset, that's why I'm crying, that's why I can't sleep, that's why I'm irritable, that's why I'm pissed off, that's why nothing seems fun, that's why I can't get joy in anything, because I have a pain in my tooth from an infected tooth that needs to go to a dentist and be pulled out. But yet my mother brings me to a psychiatrist, and what would happen? They would just put me on depression medication and all these other medications, and I would get worse. And then I would go to school, and I would be complaining and crying, and then a teacher who really does care about me might go, "What's wrong with you?" And then go, "It looks like you're rubbing your face." Yeah, I am. I'm in pain. I don't know. And then the teacher goes, "I think you have a toothache. I think you need to go to the dentist." "Who's a dentist? What's a dentist? I don't know." "Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to call your mother, and we're going to tell them to maybe have you brought to a dentist." And then the teacher would call my mother, and then my mother would bring me to the dentist. And then they find out what the issue is, a physical health issue, an infection of the tooth. They pull the tooth out, and all of a sudden I'm cured, I'm better, I'm no longer irritable, I'm no longer depressed, I'm no longer lack of sleep, I'm no longer any of these things. But see, the problem is my mother would still want me to take all these drugs from her mistake. that she thought because I got lack of sleep, because I'm irritable, because I'm really pissed off, because of all these things, I must have some mental illness. Instead, it's just a toothache. It's just I'm in pain. I'm in excruciating pain, and that's a problem. And this is my analogy. I have a neurological disorder that causes me pain in my spine, neck, and back, going throughout my limbs and nervous system for the last 25 years. And all my mother wanted to do was bring me to the wrong motherfucking doctor and make me worse and worse and worse and worse, no matter how many other people tried to tell her what was going on. Like, for instance, when I jumped into the pool, or when I was bumping into things, my brother, my father, me, my nephew, we all, even witnesses who were there, told my mother it was an accident. It happened. Now, really, I have problems moving my body, coordination issues, and seizure disorder, and I twitch and very, very twitchy, so I can't control my movements. But it was an accident. Obviously, nobody gets an injury from jumping on a pool on purpose. So, that was very obvious to everybody. But my mother kept on telling me and everybody else, no, he did it on purpose. No, he did it on purpose. After 3 people told her that, no, it's not on purpose. You're acting crazy. Please stop. After they told her that, what did she do? She told them, okay, he didn't do it on purpose. He didn't do it on purpose. So then my brother, my father, my nephew, they all leave. They walk away. And then my mother goes right up into my face and says, I don't care what they say. I still believe you did it on purpose. And sticks her finger right in my nose. Comes right up in my face, sticks her finger in my nose and tells me, I don't care what they say. I still believe that you did that on purpose, that I jumped in a pool, caught the back of my foot under a metal railing on purpose, and needed 3 stitches on the inside of my foot and I think 10 on the outside of my foot on purpose, that I wanted to go to the emergency room, be in excruciating pain, have a disgusting horseshoe scar, and have a flap hanging off. Yeah, I did all that on purpose. No, I had no clue that there even was a sharp piece of metal there. I didn't even know that I could get sliced open. And I just twitched. As I jumped in, my foot twitched backwards, got caught under a fence, and sliced open. But see, my mother couldn't understand that no matter how many times I explained it with full detail. I kept on adding detail and adding detail, trying to explain it to her. But the more I tried to explain it to her, the more my nephew tries to explain it to her, the more my brother, the more she gets angry. And she'll give in with them. When it comes to my mother, she would give in to my father and other people. She would say, okay. And then as soon as they walk away, turn to me and go, you're evil, I don't believe you, or something like that. And that's wrong. As soon as they walk away, she comes over and says something different. You tell my father and my brother that, okay, I believe you, Zach didn't do it. And then as soon as they, walk into the kitchen or leave to go to the car, you get into my face and tell me that I hurt myself on purpose. And this happened repeatedly. I can name probably at least 10 times where she blamed me for hurting myself when it was some accidental issue with coordination, or I fell, or I bumped into something. And that's wrong, because I needed to go to the doctors. And if she's going to be acting crazy, making up, blaming me for these things, then obviously I'm never going to get the medical help I need. And that's the problem. If you're bringing a kid to a psychiatrist because he has a toothache, he's never going to get the help he needs. And that's an analogy right there. A kid with a toothache can't be brought to a psychiatrist and blamed That's not going to get him the medical care he needs. And that's the problem I had. I was not able to get my seizures, my twitches, my pain in my nervous system, my this random seizure where every 4 years when I was a child, it was more like every 4 years. As an adult, now it seems like every year I have a seizure or go unconscious. Sometimes I try to hold it back and I just pass out. Other times, I just pass out and other people tell me I had a seizure when I wake up. That's not good. And this wouldn't be so hard to take care of if my mother wasn't so crazy during my childhood, if I wasn't brought and moved around my whole entire life. I mean, I was moved from Massachusetts to Texas to New Mexico to Maine to Mass to Maine to Mass to Florida to Venezuela, back up to Mass to New Hampshire to Mass to Maine, and then Mass, and then I ended up choosing to live in Maine. I mean, and actually, there was a time where I visited and spent a couple months in Florida by my own choice, too. I was just moving around in childhood like crazy. As an adult, I've only lived in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and as an adult, oh, and Maine. Actually, my parents did have me move back to Maine, but that was kind of like not my choice. I had no place to go, no place, no job, nothing. I was in the hospital and was coming out of the hospital, and when I was coming out of the hospital, it's not like I had an apartment to go straight into or anything. And with the cold affecting me, that would have been a bad idea. So I took whatever warmth I could get and whatever bed I could get. A bed and warmth is extremely important. I need to keep my sleep up if I don't want to have seizures, and I got to be very careful around the cold. And I know this. I know how real this is. This is very, very real, and medical issues have to be handled. You cannot ignore your health. That is extremely crazy. And the fact that my mother and father ignored my health and wanted me just to be unhealthy made me think it was okay to ignore my health. And that caused a lot of problems as a teenager. My mother taking drugs, ignoring my health, and then me making the same decision was a terrible mistake. And I think that if we just had some of this documented, if we just brought me to the right doctors instead of just bringing me to these psychiatrists that got very little to no help at all. Actually, the medications made it so much worse. Plus, my mother was so unqualified to be prescribing medication. I mean, be giving or messing around with. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I hope the analogy you get. You know, if you have a 6-year-old and he has a toothache and he seems irritable, he can't sleep, he's not focusing in school, you know, and you don't know he has a toothache. You just know he's irritable. You know that he's pissed off. He doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to eat. And you bring him to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist thinks he's depressed, so you put him on depression medication. That's not good. That's not a good situation for that child to be put on more and more medication for just an infection of the tooth. You don't give a kid who has an infection of the tooth psychological medication. That's not going to help. Actually, that might even make his toothache worse. And that's basically what was done to me. I had a physical disability and I was brought to the wrong type of doctor, and that made things so much worse. And there was ODs too at 7 years old. The first and worst that this ever was, this neurological disorder, was at age, I don't know, between 5 and 7, somewhere in between that, because I was in Westford and I was really young, so I can't give an exact age, but it's between the ages of 5 and 7 in Westford. I experienced an overdose that was the most violent overdose. My breathing slowed down. I lost consciousness. I lost my vision. I lost the ability to speak. I lost the ability to feel. I lost the ability to walk. I couldn't feel any of my nerves in my nervous system. I couldn't move my body properly. And everything was all fucked up. I could have died that night for sure. I was close to death. I was lucky I did not die. And the fact I wasn't brought to the emergency room as a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old's experiencing an overdose and dying on a pile of newspapers, and there's something clearly wrong, and it's not like my mother and father didn't know nothing was clearly wrong. They knew something was very wrong. I was panicking. I couldn't see. I was asking for help. My mother was on the phone with the medical professionals, and they told her to bring me to the emergency room. And I only know this because she went to the phone, called, walked away. Then she came back, and right as I was going unconscious, I heard her say, "They don't know what they're talking about." And then I heard the hang up. When I came back to, and a couple days later, and we were at the doctor's, and I brought this up, she said it was an allergy attack. An allergy attack. It was a reaction to the medication. So I asked her, well, why didn't you bring me to the emergency room? She goes, oh, well, the lady on the phone did tell me to bring you to the emergency room, but they didn't know what they were talking about. You were fine, is what she told me. If your kid is experiencing anything where they lose their vision, lose their feeling of their hands, feet, and arms, they start falling down and can't walk, and they're in the middle of the movie and they lose consciousness and their breathing slows down, you bring them to the frickin' emergency room. But see, that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted to continue drinking. They were, they're always tipsy at that late at night. There's a movie, Batman Mr. Freeze, on for me because I'm age 5 to 7. Now, my mother and father, no, they're not interested in Batman Mr. Freeze, so they've had a couple drinks prior, I would guess. I really don't know. But that's probably why they weren't as observant as they were supposed to be. Or they're just maybe negligent. I'm not sure why they didn't bring me to the emergency room when I was on a pile of newspapers dying and there was something seriously medically wrong with me, but they didn't. And they continued these behaviors over and over. Not just that. In that same place of Westford, I was also given way, way, way more Ipecac than any child should be given. Way more than the bottle recommends, and my mother knew this. She even said this. She filled up a cup with pure Ipecac. No water, nothing, just pure Ipecac. That's not good. You don't give a kid more Ipecac than is recommended because you don't like what he said. That's abuse, and that's wrong. Giving a kid a full cup of Ipecac can cause permanent damage to the esophagus and stomach. You give what the bottle recommends, not 10 times what the bottle recommends. Anyways, that's the end of this. I'm not feeling too good today, and I'm supposed to go to work. I'm vomiting the last couple of days. My muscles have been hurting, and I've been seizing quite a bit.